You feel the urge to explain, to justify, to clarify what should have never required clarification. A message unanswered, a look misread, a decision questioned. So you speak, fill the silence, defend your position. Yet each explanation leaves you smaller. This is not communication. It is exposure. The instinct to explain is not a virtue. It is a leak, and leaks drain power. Lesson 1. Why explaining yourself is a sign of weakness begins with a simple scene. A man makes a decision. A colleague questions it. A partner doubts it. A stranger misinterprets it. And something inside him tightens. Not because the decision was wrong, but because it was challenged. He feels the pull to respond, to clarify, to prove that he is reasonable, fair, intelligent, justified. He opens his mouth. Words rush out. Details, context, intent, background. He builds a case as if standing trial. And when he finishes, he senses it. He has handed something away. The cost is not in the words. It is in the posture. When you explain yourself, you kneel before the court of other people's perceptions. You accept that their misunderstanding is your responsibility to fix. You agree that their comfort is your duty to provide. You turn your spine into an apology, not with weakness of character, but with weakness of position. A man who explains too much signals that he fears being misjudged, and what is feared becomes leverage in the hands of others. Consider a meeting. A decision is announced. One man states it and moves on. Another adds reasons, background, disclaimers, softening phrases. Which one appears certain? Which one appears open to negotiation? The first may be wrong, the second may be right. But perception crowns the first with authority, because certainty does not need decoration. At home, the pattern repeats. A boundary is set. Then comes the long speech to justify it. The more words used to defend a line, the more that line appears fragile. Children learn this quickly. Partners sense it. Co-workers exploit it. Explanations invite debate. Debate invites erosion. Erosion invites collapse. There is a difference between clarity and justification. Clarity is a blade, one clean cut. Justification is a wound reopened again and again to prove it existed. A man who explains compulsively is not communicating. He is bargaining for acceptance. Silence is leverage, not empty silence, not passive silence, but deliberate silence, the kind that stands behind a decision like a locked door. When you stop explaining, others must sit with their own reactions. Their discomfort becomes theirs to manage. Their assumptions become their burden to carry. This reversal is where strength quietly resides. History has already tested this pattern. Those who spoke least were often obeyed most, not because they were kinder or wiser, but because they did not rush to rescue their image. The urge to explain will still arise. After a misunderstood message, after an unfair accusation, after a tense look across a table, the body will lean forward, the mind will assemble arguments, the tongue will itch for release. And in that moment, restraint becomes a discipline, not to punish, not to provoke, but to remain unmoved. A man who does not explain unnecessarily forces the world to adjust around him. And adjustment reveals who respects him and who merely tolerated him. The room feels different when you stop filling it with defense. Conversations shorten, challenges soften, eyes measure you more carefully, not because you demanded it, because you no longer offered yourself as something to be weighed. Lesson 2. Why explaining yourself is a sign of weakness becomes undeniable when you study silence. Not the silence of avoidance, not the silence of fear, but the silence of a man who has decided that his inner state does not require constant translation. Most men fill space instinctively. A pause feels like danger. An unanswered question feels like exposure. An uncertain expression from someone else feels like a demand. So they rush to fill the gap with words. They think they are maintaining connection. In reality, they are surrendering position. Watch two men in a tense exchange. One speaks quickly, explaining tone, intention, meaning. The other listens without interruption. When the first finishes, the second answers with a short sentence. Nothing more. The room shifts. Not because of volume, because control has changed hands. The one who needed to explain revealed his dependency on being understood. The one who waited demonstrated that misunderstanding does not threaten him. Explanation is a tax on authority. A man who is secure in his decisions does not rush to interpret himself for others. He understands that clarity offered too early becomes negotiation. He understands that defending a position before it is attacked is an admission of doubt. He lets silence carry weight. He lets others feel the friction of not knowing exactly where he stands. That friction commands attention. Consider the modern world. Messages demand immediate replies. Opinions demand disclaimers. Every statement is expected to come with context, intention, emotional footnotes. This culture trains men to explain preemptively, to soften every edge, to remove every chance of misinterpretation. But edges are what define shape. When you dull them, you become formless, easy to handle, easy to move, easy to dismiss. Silence is not absence, it is selection. A man who speaks only when necessary forces his words to matter. Each sentence arrives with density. Each pause becomes a frame around him. Others begin to measure their own words. They adjust their tone. They reconsider their assumptions because they are no longer being guided gently by constant explanation. They are facing a presence that does not bend to accommodate their comfort. This is not cruelty. It is discipline. The discipline of allowing others to sit with their own interpretations. If they misread you, let them. If they doubt you, let them. If they feel uncertain around you, let them. Their internal noise is not your assignment. Every time you resist the urge to clarify, you return responsibility to where it belongs. Think of a decision you made that was questioned, the instinct to justify, the tightening in the chest, the rehearsed argument forming before the other person even finished speaking. What would happen if you simply answered once, clearly, then stopped? No defense, no elaboration, just presence. The tension would rise, but it would rise in them, not in you. Men who master silence are rarely understood quickly. They are understood eventually. And by the time understanding arrives, respect has already settled quietly in the room, like dust on still furniture, unnoticed but undeniable. Lesson 3. Why explaining yourself is a sign of weakness becomes clearer when you notice how often men try to be understood instead of simply being clear. There is a crucial distinction. Clarity is stating what is. Explanation is pleading for agreement. The first is a statement. The second is a negotiation. And every negotiation over your own decisions lowers your standing. A man says, "I won't be attending." That is clarity. Another says, "I won't be attending because I've been under a lot of pressure lately, and I really need time to recharge, and I hope you understand." That is explanation. The information may be true, the intention may be sincere. But the second man has shifted the balance. He is no longer acting. He is asking permission after the fact. He is presenting his life as a case to be approved. This is how self-trust erodes. Not through dramatic failure, but through small habitual justifications. Each time you over-explain, you signal to yourself that your decisions are not solid until someone else validates them. Over time, you stop deciding. You start anticipating reactions. You craft choices not by principle, but by how easily they can be defended. This is the quiet architecture of weakness. Watch how often people ask, Does that make sense? After stating something, on the surface it appears polite. Underneath, it is a confession of insecurity. A man who stands firmly does not need to ask if his ground is solid. He waits. If clarification is needed, it will be requested. If not, the matter stands. The world tests this constantly. A manager questions your approach. A partner challenges your boundary. A friend doubts your plan. Each moment invites a reflex. Explain yourself fully so they feel satisfied. But satisfaction is a moving target. The more you feed it, the more it expects. Soon, every decision requires a justification speech. Your life becomes a courtroom. You become your own defense attorney. There is a quieter path. State your position once. If asked for necessary detail, provide only what is essential. No emotional padding, no defensive tone, no hidden plea for approval. Then stop. Let silence absorb the rest. This forces others to engage with your statement rather than your explanation. They must respond to what you decided, not to how convincingly you defended it. Most men fear that without explanation they will be misunderstood. They are right. They will be misunderstood. At first, misunderstanding is the price of independence. If you need to be understood immediately, you will remain controlled by other people's expectations. If you allow misunderstanding to exist without rushing to correct it, a different pattern emerges. Those who respect you will adjust. Those who do not will drift. Both outcomes are useful. History has already tested this pattern. Leaders who explained too much lost authority. Those who spoke plainly and stood still shaped rooms without raising their voice. Do not confuse this with rudeness. You can be direct without aggression. You can be brief without coldness. The strength lies not in harshness, but in the refusal to over-justify your existence. A man who trusts his own decisions does not chase agreement. He allows reality to settle around him. Lesson 4. Why explaining yourself is a sign of weakness becomes unavoidable when you understand the difference between clarity and justification. Most men believe they are being clear when they explain. They are not. They are negotiating their right to stand where they stand. Clarity is a statement that stands on its own legs. Justification is a statement leaning on crutches made of other people's approval. One moves forward, the other begs not to fall. A man with clarity says what he will do. He does not decorate it. He does not soften it. He does not add emotional cushioning so others land gently. He simply places the truth on the table and removes his hands. A man who justifies keeps his hands on the object, turning it, pointing at it, apologizing for its shape. The difference is subtle in language, but massive in presence. Listen to how people speak when they feel the need to justify. Their sentences stretch. Their tone rises at the end, as if asking a question. Their eyes search for reassurance. Their words contain disclaimers. They are not speaking from decision. They are speaking from anxiety. And anxiety is always felt, even when disguised as politeness. Clarity is sharp. Justification is noisy. When you justify, you imply that your decision is not enough on its own. You invite examination. You welcome debate. You open doors that did not need to be opened. The listener senses this and steps inside. They ask questions. They probe. They push, not always to harm you, often simply because the invitation was offered. You then explain further, believing you are being thorough, unaware that each additional layer signals uncertainty. A man who is clear does not chase understanding. He allows understanding to come or not come. He does not rearrange himself to fit into someone else's interpretation. He accepts that some will misread him. He does not panic at this. He does not rush to correct it. He knows that time reveals consistency, and consistency reveals truth. Consider a workplace decision. A man announces a change. If he follows with extensive reasoning, backstory, personal struggle, emotional context, he is unconsciously saying, "Please accept this." If he states the change and proceeds with action, he is saying, "This is happening." The first invites resistance. The second invites adjustment. People adapt faster to certainty than to persuasion. At home, clarity sounds like a boundary spoken once. Justification sounds like a boundary defended repeatedly. The first teaches respect. The second teaches negotiation. Children learn quickly which parent means what they say and which parent can be worn down with questions. Adults are no different. Only the strategies become more sophisticated. This does not mean becoming a stone. You can be warm, you can be attentive, you can listen. But when it is time to speak your position, you do so without leaning on explanation as a shield. You allow your words to stand exposed. If they are right, they will hold. If they are wrong, you will correct them through action, not excuses. A man who abandons justification begins to feel a new tension, the tension of being seen without armor. At first, it feels like risk. Then it becomes freedom. No more rehearsed speeches in the mind, no more mental courts where you defend yourself against imaginary judges. No more exhaustion from carrying your image in your mouth. The moment you stop justifying, you reclaim energy that was never meant to be spent on self-defense. That energy returns to observation, to restraint, to deliberate action. And slowly, people stop expecting explanations from you. They stop pulling at your words. They listen differently. They weigh their own speech before approaching yours. Clarity is not loud. It is final. Lesson 5. Why explaining yourself is a sign of weakness becomes most visible in social dynamics, not in formal settings, not in structured environments, but in everyday interactions where status is negotiated silently, moment by moment. A glance, a delayed reply, a short answer, a decision stated without preamble. These small exchanges form hierarchies more reliably than titles ever will, and nothing lowers position faster than unnecessary explanation. In a group, the man who explains himself often is unconsciously signaling that he fears exclusion. He speaks to secure his place. He clarifies to avoid misinterpretation. He justifies to prevent rejection. His words are not responses. They are insurance policies, and insurance is purchased by those who expect loss. Watch a table of men talking. One tells a story and adds context, emotional cues, disclaimers, careful positioning of intent. Another tells a story with fewer words and no defense. The group laughs, reacts, responds. Who appears grounded? Who appears to need the room? Social gravity always pulls toward the man who does not try to hold it. Over-explaining is a request to be managed. When you explain excessively, you give others a role over you. They become the interpreter, the evaluator, the judge. They decide whether your explanation is sufficient. And once you give someone the position of judge, you are no longer equal in that moment. You are the subject. They are the authority. This shift happens silently, invisibly, but the body recognizes it. Shoulders tilt. Voice softens, eyes flicker for feedback. The hierarchy locks in place. Silence interrupts this pattern. A man who states something once and remains still leaves no opening for judgment. There is nothing to evaluate, nothing to correct, nothing to refine. The other person must either accept, ask a necessary question, or walk away with their assumptions. In all three cases, you remain in your position. You do not chase theirs. Most men fear this. They fear being seen as cold, distant, arrogant, uncaring. But these are names given by those who rely on constant emotional signaling. The disciplined man does not perform warmth to ease insecurity. He lets his actions reveal his stance over time. He understands that real trust is built through consistency, not explanation. A man who explains often is easy to manipulate. Offer confusion, he clarifies. Offer doubt, he defends. Offer mild accusation, he produces evidence. He becomes predictable. Press here, words appear. Press there, more words. Predictability is comfort for others, but captivity for him. The disciplined man is harder to move, not through aggression, through stillness. He does not react immediately. He does not fill space compulsively. He listens. He answers only what was asked. No surplus, no self-disclosure as tribute. The other person must approach him with precision, because casual pressure yields no reward. This changes how people treat you. They speak more carefully. They think before challenging you. They ask instead of assume. Not because you demanded respect, but because you removed the habit of over-explaining that once invited intrusion. A man who stops explaining becomes slightly unknown, even to those close to him. Not secretive, simply self-contained. His interior no longer spills outward to calm external noise. He lets others carry their own discomfort. This is where quiet authority begins. Not in dominance, not in performance, in the refusal to offer yourself for interpretation. Lesson 6. Why explaining yourself is a sign of weakness becomes personal when you attempt to stop. Not in theory, not in reflection, but in the moment, your chest tightens and your tongue prepares to defend you. This is where most men fail, not because they lack understanding, but because they lack training. The impulse to explain is muscular, automatic, deeply rehearsed through years of smoothing tension, preventing conflict, avoiding disapproval. To break it requires deliberate friction against your own reflex. The first time you hold your line without explaining, you will feel exposed. A question lands. An accusation flickers, a misunderstanding appears, and you answer once, simply, then silence. No elaboration, no reassurance, no rescue attempt for the other person's reaction. Inside, alarms sound. You will want to fill the gap. You will imagine worst-case interpretations. You will feel the urge to correct them before they settle. This is the withdrawal symptom of dependency on approval. Most men never experience this moment. They escape it with words. They anesthetize it with explanation. And so they remain permanently managed by external perception. Training begins here, in small situations first. A text misunderstood, a decision questioned casually, a minor disagreement. You state your position, then you stop. You watch what rises in you, heat, anxiety, the fantasy of rejection. You let it pass without action. This is not indifference. It is discipline. You are teaching your nervous system that silence does not equal danger. A man who cannot hold silence cannot hold power. Over time, something shifts. The discomfort lessens. The pauses become natural. You begin to notice how often others expect you to perform emotional labor for them, to clarify their confusion, to soothe their uncertainty, to preempt their discomfort. When you stop doing this, they are forced to meet themselves. Some will grow, some will leave. Both outcomes are alignment. Holding the line does not mean refusing all explanation. It means refusing unnecessary explanation. If clarity is required for practical action, you provide it. Cleanly, directly, without emotional cushioning, without apology, without pleading tone. Then you stop again. You are not mysterious. You are precise. Men often ask, "What if I appear rude?" Let that question sit. Rudeness is often simply the name given to someone who refuses to over-accommodate. You are not obligated to make every interaction comfortable. Comfort is not the measure of respect. Consistency is. The training continues when stakes rise. A partner presses for justification. A colleague pushes for reasons. A friend demands emotional transparency on command. You feel the old impulse, and you remember, speak once, then be still. The first few times your voice may tremble. That is acceptable. Discipline is not the absence of reaction. It is the refusal to obey it. Silence is not absence. It is ownership. As you train this, your words change. They shorten. They slow. They carry weight. People listen differently, not because you force them, because your speech is no longer cluttered with defense. You are no longer selling yourself. You are simply present. A man who holds his line becomes difficult to manipulate. There is no handle to grab, no excess explanation to twist, no emotional leakage to exploit. Only a decision and a presence that stands behind it. Lesson 7. Why explaining yourself is a sign of weakness becomes evident when you observe how explanations invite judgment. The moment you explain, you open a file on yourself. You offer your motives, your reasoning, your inner process for inspection. You turn your interior into a document that others can annotate. Most men do this without realizing it. They believe they are being transparent. In reality, they are granting access to a room that never needed visitors. A man states a boundary. If he adds reasons, he hands over entry points. Each reason can be questioned. Each motive can be doubted. Each context can be challenged. The original statement becomes secondary. The explanation becomes the target. Now, the conversation is no longer about the boundary. It is about whether his reasons are valid. He has shifted from authority to defendant. Judgment thrives on material. When you offer little, there is little to judge. When you offer much, you invite evaluation. This is why men who explain excessively feel constantly assessed. They are. They volunteered for it. They have built a habit of presenting themselves for review. And once that habit is established, others come to expect it. They feel entitled to your inner workings. They ask for justification as if it is their right. The disciplined man breaks this contract. He does not reveal his internal landscape to prove his decisions. He keeps his motives private unless disclosure serves a strategic purpose. He understands that privacy is not secrecy. It is sovereignty. He allows others to know what he does, not why he must do it. The difference is subtle but decisive. Consider how rare it is to encounter a man who answers personal questions briefly. No backstory, no emotional display, just enough information to be polite, nothing more. Most people feel unsettled around him at first. They sense that they cannot map him easily. They cannot predict him fully. This unsettles those who rely on easy access, but it earns the respect of those who understand boundaries. Explanations feed entitlement. If you explain every choice, others begin to believe they deserve explanations for every choice. If you reveal every motive, they believe they have the right to evaluate every motive. If you justify every boundary, they believe they can negotiate every boundary. The pattern grows quietly until one day you realize you are living under constant inquiry, wondering why you feel invaded. The invasion began with voluntary disclosure. A man who stops explaining reclaims territory. He answers what is necessary. He speaks to facts. He does not narrate his inner weather. He does not confess uncertainty to earn empathy. He lets others handle their curiosity. Curiosity is not your responsibility to satisfy. Understanding is not your duty to manufacture. This is where a new form of respect appears. Not the warmth of familiarity, the respect of distance. People approach you with more care. They frame questions more thoughtfully. They recognize that access to your reasoning is not automatic. It must be relevant. It must be earned through genuine need, not casual probing. Some will call this closed. They are correct. You are closed to unnecessary intrusion. A house without doors is not open. It is destroyed. A man without boundaries is not kind. He is hollow. There is strength in being partially unreadable, not through games, not through deception, but through restraint. You speak your decision. You act. You let results explain you better than words ever could. A man who understands this stops offering himself as a document. He becomes the author, not the text. Lesson 8. Why explaining yourself is a sign of weakness becomes unmistakable when you see how explanations replace action. Many men believe words can stabilize what only behavior can prove. They think that if they explain their intentions clearly enough, they will be trusted. That if they justify their direction thoroughly enough, they will be followed. That if they narrate their character convincingly enough, they will be respected. This is a misunderstanding of how humans measure reliability. People believe patterns, not paragraphs. A man who explains his loyalty but acts inconsistently is distrusted. A man who rarely speaks of loyalty but moves consistently is believed. Action carries gravity. Explanation carries noise. The more you rely on words to secure perception, the less your actions are allowed to speak. And when words lead and action follows behind, credibility reverses. You become a voice trying to catch up with itself. This is why over-explaining often precedes broken trust, not because the man intended harm, but because he tried to substitute reassurance for evidence. He sensed doubt and attempted to erase it with language. Yet doubt is not dissolved by speech. It is dissolved by time and consistency. Every explanation offered in place of proof becomes a fragile bridge. It holds briefly, then collapses. Men who act do not need to explain much. Men who explain much often delay action. This pattern appears everywhere. A man promises improvement in a relationship and explains how deeply he understands, how committed he feels, how different things will be. But change remains conceptual. Another man says little but adjusts behavior quietly. One is persuasive, the other is dependable. Over time, persuasion exhausts itself. Dependability accumulates weight. In work, the pattern repeats. One man presents elaborate reasoning for why results will come. Another produces results. The first manages perception. The second builds reality. When deadlines arrive, explanations expire. Only output remains. This is why seasoned leaders listen for actions, not speeches. They have seen too many men drown in their own eloquence. A man who stops explaining discovers a harder path. He must let action carry all meaning. There is no linguistic safety net, no emotional disclaimer, no story to soften failure. If he falls short, it is visible. If he succeeds, it is undeniable. This exposure is what most men avoid by explaining. Explanation is often an attempt to pre-negotiate forgiveness for possible future inconsistency. When you remove explanation, accountability sharpens. You say what you will do, then you do it. Or you do not. There is nowhere to hide. This clarity is brutal at first. It reveals where you were relying on words to compensate for gaps in follow-through. But once seen, it can be corrected. Discipline becomes concrete, not expressed, but embodied. Others notice this quickly. They stop asking for reasons. They watch outcomes. They trust your silence more than another man's reassurance. This is not because you are superior. It is because your behavior is no longer competing with your speech. They align. A man who acts before he speaks gains authority without seeking it. A man who speaks before he acts spends his life repairing impressions. The instinct to explain is often the instinct to delay reality. The disciplined man allows reality to arrive without decoration. He accepts that proof is slower than persuasion, but he chooses slow gravity over quick charm. Words can announce. Only actions confirm. Lesson 9. Why explaining yourself is a sign of weakness becomes absolute when you recognize the psychology of seeking permission. Most men do not realize that excessive explanation is a disguised request to be allowed to exist as they are. They speak as if standing before an invisible council, presenting evidence that their choices are acceptable, their boundaries reasonable, their direction justified. They do not simply decide. They ask the world to co-sign their will. Permission is the currency of dependent men. When you explain yourself unnecessarily, you are asking, "May I do this?" even after you have already done it. This is why explanations often feel like relief when accepted and humiliation when rejected. Because at their core, they were not information, they were petitions. The independent man does not petition. He understands that adulthood is the moment permission ended. No one granted him the right to choose his path. He assumed it. This assumption carries responsibility, but it also carries authority. The moment he starts explaining his choices to secure acceptance, he returns psychologically to childhood, where decisions required parental approval. Many men live their entire lives in this posture without noticing it. You see it when a man explains why he ended a relationship, why he changed careers, why he set a boundary with family, why he refuses certain social obligations. He feels compelled to present a moral case. He fears being seen as unreasonable. He is not communicating. He is submitting to an imagined tribunal. A man who no longer seeks permission speaks differently. He does not announce his independence. He simply acts from it. If asked, he answers briefly. If criticized, he listens without collapsing. If misunderstood, he does not scramble to fix the narrative. He accepts that not everyone will grant him legitimacy. He does not require it. The moment you stop seeking permission, explanations lose their urgency. This is when your relationships change. Some people grow uncomfortable. They were accustomed to your justifications. They relied on your explanations to negotiate with you, to influence you, to reshape your choices. When those openings close, they must relate to you differently or drift away. Both outcomes clarify your environment. A man who has stepped out of permission-seeking no longer explains his boundaries. He states them. He no longer defends his priorities. He lives them. He no longer justifies his solitude. He inhabits it. His life becomes a statement, not an argument. This does not make him unreachable. It makes him real. When he chooses to explain, it is a gift, not an obligation. When he shares his reasoning, it is because he decided to share, not because he fears being misread. This distinction changes the texture of every conversation. Most men will never taste this. They will continue explaining, clarifying, justifying, softening, rehearsing, anticipating, pleading quietly for acceptance. They will call it communication. But beneath it lives dependence. The disciplined man does not ask the world to allow him. He moves. The world adjusts or resists. Both reveal truth. A man who no longer seeks permission does not need to raise his voice. His life answers for him. Lesson 10. Why explaining yourself is a sign of weakness reaches its final edge when you realize what replaces explanation. Presence. Not posture, not performance, presence. The state of being so internally settled that your decisions do not require scaffolding. Your silence does not need justification. Your boundaries do not need narration. Your path does not need an audience to validate it. Most men live outward. Their sense of self leans on reaction, a nod, a reply, an agreement, a softened face across from them. When these signals appear, they feel safe. When they do not, they explain. They pour words into the gap, hoping to rebuild stability. They have never learned to remain whole without external confirmation. Presence ends this dependence. A man with presence does not hurry. He does not over-answer. He does not pre-defend. He allows space to exist without rushing to fill it. He allows others to feel uncertainty without rescuing them from it. He allows misinterpretation without chasing correction. His internal state does not swing with every raised eyebrow or delayed response. This is not arrogance. Arrogance needs attention. Presence does not. Picture two men entering a room. One speaks quickly, signals friendliness, explains himself early, aligns his tone to the group, tries to fit smoothly. The other greets, then settles. He speaks when spoken to. He listens fully. He answers precisely. He does not volunteer excess. Over time, eyes drift toward him, not because he demands attention, because he is not spending energy trying to manage it. Presence is the opposite of explaining. Explaining disperses energy outward. Presence concentrates it inward. Explaining tries to control perception. Presence allows perception to form naturally. Explaining seeks to be understood. Presence accepts being partially unknown. This acceptance is rare, and rarity attracts respect. The man who has built presence does not fear silence. Silence is his ally. He does not fear disagreement. Disagreement is information, not threat. He does not fear judgment. Judgment belongs to the judge. He does not fear misunderstanding. Misunderstanding filters who belongs in his life. When explanation disappears, a new responsibility appears. You must live in alignment with what you state. You can no longer hide behind persuasive language. Your behavior becomes your only argument. This demands consistency. Consistency demands self-governance. Self-governance demands discipline. This is why most men return to explaining. It is easier to speak than to be. But the man who endures this training becomes simple in a rare way. Not simplistic, simple. Few words, clear actions, stable emotional climate. Others feel this immediately. They feel they cannot push him easily, cannot manipulate him quickly, cannot access him cheaply. He is available, but not open for invasion. Presence is the quiet power that explanation can never achieve. No sentence delivered with urgency will match the gravity of a man who can sit in silence without anxiety. No justification speech will equal the authority of a man who allows his life to demonstrate his stance. No clarification will surpass the clarity of a man whose behavior and words never contradict. This is the destination hidden inside the title. Stop explaining, not to become mute, but to become solid. Stop justifying, not to become harsh, but to become self-contained. Stop narrating your inner world, not to become distant, but to become sovereign. A man who no longer explains is not misunderstood. He is simply no longer available for negotiation. If these words sharpen something in you, stay here. Subscribe to the channel, not for motivation, for refinement, and leave a comment, not to agree, but to mark that you were here paying attention. Most men scroll past discipline. Few choose to face it. Decide which one you are.